Welcome to Deep Dive Lab, where we break down and dissect cutting-edge scientific research, from advanced biomedical technologies to breakthroughs in AI, material science, chemistry, and physics, all told as compelling, easy-to-follow stories.
Thanks for having me back. It is always a good time digging into this stuff with you.
Yeah, I am so excited for this one. Today, we are taking a fascinating look at the human mind. And I want you to think about a relatable, everyday situation for a second.
Oh, okay. Lay it on me.
So we all have that one incredibly, almost aggressively optimistic friend. You know the exact type I'm talking about.
Oh, totally. I think I am that friend sometimes, honestly.
Now then picture this. You're on a road trip, right? The car breaks down in the middle of absolute nowhere. Smoke is just billowing out from under the hood.
Classic nightmare scenario.
Right. And while everyone else is panicking, this one friend is vividly imagining the amazing, hidden gem diner food you're inevitably about to discover while waiting for the tow truck.
Yeah, it's like they are living in a completely different reality from the rest of the group.
Exactly. And usually, as observers, we just chalk that up to personality.
Right, we assume they just have a sunny disposition, or they're making a conscious, active choice to look on the bright side of a bad situation.
Yeah, we treat it as just a behavioral quirk. But here's a strange question that I really want to explore today. Do optimistic people actually share the exact same physical brain patterns when they think about the future?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. And if they do, what is happening inside the brains of everyone else? Like, are optimists all navigating the future using the exact same neurological GPS while the rest of us are just driving without a map?
Well, for a very long time, the mechanics of that neurological GPS were just a complete black box to us.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I feel like we hear about optimism all the time.
We do, but we only understood the end result. The actual biological architecture of human imagination was hidden. But now we are finally at a point where scientists have found a way to literally look under the hood of human optimism.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we've known for decades that optimism is good for you, right? Like, it's not breaking news that positive thinking has benefits.
Oh, absolutely not. The foundational context here is that optimism is a massive, highly documented psychological resource.
It lowers stress and all that.
Yeah, when we look at historical data across millions of individuals, optimism reliably buffers against negative moods. It mitigates the physiological effects of stress, lowering cortisol levels and blood pressure.
Which is obviously great for your heart and everything else.
Exactly. It is highly correlated with enhanced overall well-being and even long-term physical health and longevity.
So the scientific community already had a really solid grasp on what optimism does for the body.
Yes, but knowing that optimism is good for you is very different from understanding how the physical brain actually constructs that optimism in real time.
I see.
Scientists were entirely stumped by how the brain represents these differences during what we call episodic future thinking.
Episodic future thinking. I'm guessing that's the brain's ability to mentally simulate possible future events.
You got it. It's the brain's built-in time machine.
Like picturing yourself at a job interview next week or imagining that diner food on the side of the highway.
Exactly. It allows us to project ourselves forward in time to anticipate outcomes. But studying this actually presented a massive hurdle for neuroscience.
Why is that? We have MRI machines, don't we?
We do, but historically, functional MRI studies, fMRI, relied really heavily on group averages.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so the standard procedure was to put 50 people in a scanner, have them perform a cognitive task, and then just average out the brain activity to see which general regions lit up.
But the problem is that imagining the future is a highly idiosyncratic, deeply personal experience.
Exactly. It's not a standardized math problem.
Right, because my version of an amazing future,
Say.
reading a science fiction novel on a quiet, isolated beach, is going to look entirely different from your version of an amazing future.
Right. Which for me might be front row at a crowded rock concert.
So if you just average those two brain scans together, aren't you just creating meaningless data?
You are. You wash out all the subtle individual differences. It was incredibly difficult to measure whether two different people imagining a positive future were actually experiencing the same neurological reality.
Or if every single person's imagination was just fundamentally unique to their own life experiences.
Right. It's like when you blend 1,000 unique paintings into a single gray sludge, you lose the ability to understand the art itself.
Wow. You essentially delete the human element just to get a clean data point.
Pretty much, yeah.
So how did scientists figure this out? If the old methods were blurring the picture, How did they finally isolate the individual experience of optimism? This is where the story gets really interesting.
It really does. So the breakthrough we are looking at comes from a 2025 study. It was published in the prestigious journal PNAS. That's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
Okay, major publication.
Definitely. Dr. Kuniaki Yanagisawa from Kobe University, working alongside colleagues from Kyoto University and other institutions across Japan and Australia, designed a truly ingenious experiment to bypass this averaging problem entirely.
I was actually looking at the methodology for this before we started, and it is intense.
It is wild, right?
Yeah, they conducted 2 separate fMRI studies. And they basically took healthy adults, put them into a brain scanner, and gave them these short text descriptions of possible life events to imagine.
And keep in mind, they only had 10 seconds at a time to picture these scenarios.
10 seconds is so fast. And the prompts were wild. You had highly positive ones like, you will take an epic trip around the world.
Sounds great.
Right. But then neutral ones like, you will submit your resume, and negative ones like, you will be fired by your company.
And it gets darker. In the first study, they even threw in extreme death-related events.
Wait, really? Like what kind of events?
Things like being diagnosed with a terminal illness or getting into a fatal accident.
Oh, wow. That is incredibly heavy to drop on someone in a scanner.
It is. And they specifically didn't just ask the participants to imagine these events happening to themselves, but also to their romantic partners.
Why add the partners into it?
Well, the goal was to capture a broad, comprehensive range of cognitive and emotional contexts. The researchers really needed to see if the brain patterns held up, whether the participant was thinking about their own survival and happiness or the survival and happiness of someone they loved.
Okay, I have to push back on this setup for a second, though.
Sure, go ahead.
You're laying inside a loud, claustrophobic magnetic tube. A screen flashes a prompt about your partner getting a terminal illness, and you only have 10 seconds to visualize it.
Yeah.
Can a brain scan truly capture genuine human imagination in a 10-second window?
It's a fair question.
And more importantly, how do we know these people are actually highly optimistic and not just faking it? Like, maybe they were just lying on a self-reported survey to look like well-adjusted people.
Those are critical questions, and they get to the absolute heart of why fMRI is so powerful here.
Because it doesn't rely on what they say.
Exactly. You can easily lie on a personality questionnaire, but you cannot consciously control the localized blood oxygen levels deep inside your cerebral cortex.
Ah, so it's a physiological reflex.
Right. When the brain simulates a future event, even for just a few seconds, it immediately recruits a region called the medial prefrontal cortex, or MPFC.
The MPFC.
Got it. This is the brain's main hub for self-referential thought and future simulation. As soon as you read that prompt, the neurons in your MPFC start firing, demanding oxygen-rich blood.
And the fMRI captures that autonomic metabolic response in real time.
Exactly. You might consciously try to put a brave face on a bad prompt, but the scanner is reading the raw, underlying physiological construction of the thought itself.
So the machine is basically seeing the thought before the participant even has time to censor it. That is fascinating.
It really is. Now, to decode that raw data without averaging it all into gray sludge, the researchers deployed 2 highly advanced analytical techniques.
Okay, lay them on me.
The first is called intersubject representational similarity analysis, or ISRSA, and the second is multidimensional scaling, or INDS scale.
Whoa, hold on. Multidimensional scaling. Intersubject representational similarity analysis.
Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful.
You're going to have to translate that for me. Because right now I'm picturing some dense sci-fi movie, and I think we need to ground this in reality. How do those tools actually work on the physical brain?
Let's break down the physical reality of an fMRI scan. The scanner divides the brain into tiny 3D cubes called voxels.
Like 3-dimensional pixels.
Exactly like 3D pixels. Each voxel contains millions of neurons. So when we talk about a neural pattern, we are talking about exactly which specific voxels in the medial prefrontal cortex are demanding blood at any given millisecond.
Okay, so a specific constellation of cubes lighting up.
Right. Now, ISRSA is a mathematical tool that compares your specific voxel pattern to my specific voxel pattern.
So it's looking at the differences between us.
Yes, but it doesn't ask how much your brain is lighting up overall. It asks if the actual shape of your brain activity matches the shape of mine.
Oh, I see. So if you and I both read the prompt, you will be fired by your company, ISRSA measures the mathematical distance between my pattern of lit up brain cubes and your pattern of lit up brain cubes.
You've got it perfectly. And then INDSC cell takes all those complex mathematical distances between different people's thoughts and plots them onto a 3D geometric map.
It essentially creates a physical map of mental real estate.
Yes. By doing this, Dr. Yanagisa and his team weren't just looking at a flat image, they were exploring the actual geometry of human imagination.
Seeing how close or how far apart different thoughts literally lived inside the minds of the participants.
Exactly.
If you were listening to this right now, just think about how wild that is. Scientists can physically map the distance between your thought about a vacation and your thought about losing your job.
It is truly cutting edge.
But when they actually plotted all these participants on this 3D map, what did the terrain look like? Did any patterns emerge?
They did, and the researchers actually invoke a very famous piece of literature to describe the results. Have you ever read Leo Tolstoy's novel, Anna Karenina?
Oh, sure. I know the famous opening line, at least. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way.
Spot on. Well, in the context of the medial prefrontal cortex, the data translated to this. Optimists are all alike, but each less optimistic individual imagines the future in their own way.
Wait, really? Are optimists literally singing from the exact same neurological sheet music?
They absolutely are. The brain scans showed that highly optimistic individuals had incredibly similar convergent neural patterns.
So if you took two highly optimistic people,
Their voxel patterns during these future simulations were almost indistinguishable. They clustered tightly together in that 3D mental space.
but what about the less optimistic people, the pessimists and the realists?
Their neural patterns were wildly scattered. There was no shared pessimist brain pattern at all.
Wow.
Yeah. Each less optimistic person was processing the future in a completely unique, isolated neurological language.
So if you consider yourself a realist, your brain is actively charting a map of tomorrow that looks like absolutely no one else's.
That's what the data suggests.
But I'm still stuck on the negative prompts. If optimists are all firing the exact same way, how are they handling the bad stuff?
What do you mean?
Well, we have this societal trope of toxic positivity, right?
Yeah.
The idea that optimists just put a delusional positive spin on bad events, like, oh, my partner has a terminal illness, but think of all the quality time we'll spend together in the hospital. Does the brain scan show them just mashing the good and bad together to make it all seem fine?
This is where it gets really cool. What's fascinating here is that the INDSV mapping, that 3D geometry of their thoughts, completely shattered the toxic positivity assumption.
Oh, really? How so?
Optimists do not mash positive and negative events together. The data proved that optimists structurally push positive and negative events much, much further apart in their mental space than less optimistic people do.
Wait, they're actively creating neurological distance between the good and the bad.
Yes. When an optimist processes a negative scenario, the MPFC processes it in a highly distant, abstract way. It's mathematically kept at an arm's length.
Interesting. And what about the positive scenarios?
When they process positive events, the voxel patterns show them imagining those events vividly, concretely, almost as if they're experiencing them in the present moment.
So they effectively separate emotional valence, keeping the bad scenarios in a totally different neural zip code from the good ones?
Exactly.
That is so counterintuitive. You'd think an optimist would pull everything closer to force it all to seem okay. Instead, they are creating this massive boundary.
It's a highly organized way of thinking, actually.
It's like they have a VIP section in their brain for good things, and the bad things are stuck outside the club behind a velvet rope.
I love that analogy.
They acknowledge the bad things exist, like they see them out there on the street, but they simply refuse to let them on the dance floor.
That is exactly what the scans show. They differentiate emotional valence incredibly sharply. This asymmetric processing, vivid and close for the good, abstract and distant for the bad, is the shared cognitive structure that all these optimists had in common.
And the less optimistic participants didn't do this.
No, they didn't. Their brains sort of mixed the vividness of positive and negative events together, which is why their maps were so scattered and unique.
Okay, so we have this incredible visualization of how optimists process the future. We know their brains use the same spatial map, and we know they force negative thoughts behind a velvet rope.
Right.
So what does this all mean? If we pull back from the fMRI scanner, why does this matter for you and me navigating our daily lives? What is the evolutionary or social benefit of having a brain that works this way?
Well, the most profound implications of this study are deeply social. Psychologists have known for decades that optimists tend to have larger social networks.
That makes sense.
They report higher relationship satisfaction, increased perceived social support, and they're generally perceived by others as more likable and attractive partners.
Yeah, they are the people you just naturally want to be around, the ones who make a broken down car feel like an adventure.
Exactly. And traditionally, sociology might have argued that they just smile more or they are less burdensome to be around.
But this research suggests something deeper.
It suggests something structural. It suggests that this social advantage is actually driven by a shared biological cognitive framework.
Because optimists share identical neural processing when anticipating the future, they are physically in sync with one another.
Yes. It's not just about being pleasant, it's about mutual, frictionless understanding.
Oh, wow. So if you and I are both optimists, our brains are basically operating on the same voxel wavelength when we talk about what we're going to do next year.
Exactly. The mental labor of trying to decode someone else's perspective is practically eliminated.
That is wild.
This shared neural processing might be the very foundation that makes social connections so effortless for them. When your brain represents the abstract future in the exact same geometry as the people around you, communication flows seamlessly.
You feel implicitly understood and you implicitly understand others.
Exactly.
Okay, I have to ask on behalf of the listener who might be identifying a bit more with the scattered brain scans right now.
Fair enough.
If you aren't naturally optimistic,
Yeah.
are you doomed to neurological isolation? Are you just wandering alone in your own unique, idiosyncratic brain space forever, unable to sync up with the rest of the world?
No. It is crucial to look at what the data actually tells us, and no, you are absolutely not doomed to isolation.
I guess you.
This research just highlights the power of positive traits to foster broad, shared understanding. It's a lens through which we can view the mechanics of human connection.
So it's not a life sentence of loneliness.
Not at all. The fact that less optimistic people have unique brain patterns simply means their neural baseline for imagining the future isn't automatically synchronized with a massive demographic group.
They might require more active communication to bridge the gap with others.
Exactly. It's a biological insight into how we relate.
Less optimistic people just have a highly customized operating system, whereas optimists are all running on the universally compatible software.
That is a brilliant way to put it. And beyond the social dynamics, this study represents a tectonic shift for the future of science itself.
How so?
For cognitive neuroscience, this is a clear signal that the era of relying solely on group averages needs to end.
Right, because we finally have the tools to look deeper.
Yes. By combining intersubject representational similarity analysis and multidimensional scaling, researchers can visualize the subtle, highly unique ways individual humans construct reality.
It's the difference between studying the human brain as an abstract concept and having the tools to actually study your specific brain.
Exactly. It proves we finally have the mathematics and the imaging technology to measure idiosyncratic individual thought without destroying the nuance.
This has been a massive journey today, from a broken down car to the 3D geometry of the prefrontal cortex.
It really has.
If you're listening to this and want the ultimate cheat sheet on what we just explored, here are the 3 big takeaways. Number 1, optimists share highly similar neural processing in the brain's medial prefrontal cortex when they imagine the future.
They are biologically operating on the same wavelength.
Number 2, optimistic brains actively and sharply separate the mental distance between positive and negative future events. They keep the bad stuff abstract and the good stuff incredibly vivid.
Behind the velvet rope.
Exactly. And number 3, less optimistic people aren't a monolith. They imagine the future in their own highly unique, completely idiosyncratic ways.
If there's one big picture insight to take away from all of this, it's a philosophical shift in how we view positivity.
I agree completely.
Positivity isn't just an attitude. It's not just a mood you decide to put on in the morning to get through the day. It is a shared neurological reality,
It physically aligns our brains with the people around us.
creating a literal biological bridge for human connection.
It definitely makes you look at that optimistic friend whose car just broke down in a totally different light.
Doesn't it?
They aren't being naive or ignoring the smoke. Their brain is actively constructing a shared, protective reality to keep the negative abstract and the positive close at hand. Which leaves me with one final, lingering thought for you to consider today.
What's that?
If this discovery is just the beginning, what might scientists uncover next? Could we eventually train our brains to sync up with others simply by choosing to focus on the positive, Could empathy and connection literally be practiced and physically carved into our neural pathways over time?
That is a fascinating question to leave on.
Thank you for joining the Deep Dive Lab. Make sure to follow and subscribe for more fascinating science stories where we uncover the mysteries of the world step by step.